Listen to me when I say that when you are in the will of God, you are going to fight. You're going to feel pressure. You're going to feel oppression. You're going to be opposed. You're going to feel discouraged at times, because what's happening is that the enemy wants to cause you to be discouraged and cause you to change your mind concerning what God is telling you to do. So you have to discern opposition. That's something that I taught at church the other day. We need to get to a place where we can, and I'm talking to you all in real time, okay? So I haven't even fully walked through this myself yet. I realize that when you are in the will of God, oftentimes you will face opposition because the enemy wants to discourage you. The enemy wants you to believe the lie so that you just give up and throw the towel in and say, actually, you know what? I'm not going to do this. This isn't God's will. But you have to learn how to discern opposition and fight, resist the urge to give up, resist the urge to settle in that place of defeat and fight back. But the key is discerning the will of God. You have to know what God's will is so that you can fight properly, right? And so, yeah, I just thought that I would share that, because sometimes we can really get discouraged and just feel like, you know what, the opposition is too much. I'm outside of God's will, clearly, so I'm not doing this, right? Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you can face opposition and resistance because you're actually going against God's will, and that's him trying to realign you. But then there are other times where you face opposition because you are doing what God's called you to do, and there are many adversaries against you, and there are many people conspiring against you, and there are things just trying to discourage you so that you give up, right? But I want you to be encouraged and to continue to fight. The Lord is going to renew your strength.
It's the way you take me up from down and place my feet on solid ground.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Cynthia, and on this channel I do a little bit of everything. I share about faith, I share my career as a clinical social worker, and I talk a little bit about lifestyle things. Occasionally you'll see some vlogs. Today you will be watching me as I work as a social worker. It's an interesting day today. We've missed a lot of the week. I work in a school, and we haven't been in school for most of this week because we had a snowstorm. And so yeah, like, I mean, that just interferes with seeing my clients, obviously. So that when on days like this, I have to now figure out if I want to cram all of my sessions in. Like, if I were to still see, because I have a caseload of 12 right now, if I were to still see all of my clients, and today's Thursday, first day I'm seeing clients this week. If I were to try to see all of my clients this week between today and tomorrow, I would be seeing 6 today, 6 tomorrow. That's a lot. I had to change out my battery, but yeah, I don't know how that's gonna work, because as I mentioned in my last video, a lot of times I can't see my students when I need to because they're testing. And so today is one of those situations. I think they're testing because we've missed a lot of school this week, and they were testing last week, so I'm going to assume that they're testing again. And so I just don't know how realistic it is to see 6 of my clients today. I have a meeting with my agency as well this afternoon, and then try to get all of my notes in before the end of the day. So we're really just going to see how that goes. Things are out of my control. I mean, if the weather's bad, the weather's bad. Okay, so somebody said on my navigating liberal issues as a woman of faith in social work, someone said, I'm really contemplating getting an MSW for this very reason. I have no intention on compromising my faith for worldly ideologies or for any liberal movement, and I just think it will be so unfulfilling for me. She said, going back and forth between MSW and LPC. So for those of you who have no idea what these acronyms mean, MSW is a Master's of Social Work. LPC is a licensed professional counselor. And then she left another message. I think this was after she watched the video. Oh my gosh, she left three messages. Okay, 3 comments. Then she said, Liberty University has an MSW program. I'm studying MPH, which is Masters of Public Health. And I like how they combine the Word of God with their studies. I believe Liberty is a Christian university, so that would make sense. I'm hoping that with the Trump administration, a lot of these ideologies are removed. And I agree. I see it in mental health, how a lot of Christians are compromised. And then the last thing she said is, oh my gosh, the pronouns is pure confusion. I have just started saying the client, but I refuse to call anyone anything other than their assigned gender at birth. Thank you so much, Tish.h, for your comments on that video. Yeah, that was a highly requested video for me to do because I'm very vocal and open about my faith in Jesus. You all know that. I don't hide my faith. I'm not ashamed of my faith. The people I work with know that I'm a believer. I'm not the kind of believer that will discourage you from going into secular jobs, all right? I don't hold the belief that as a believer we ought to just be cooped up in a church or cooped up in like we should avoid being in secular settings. I'm gonna have to get something to close my window because anytime the kids walk by, they're like peeking into my office. But anyway, this is better because they can't see my camera. But yeah, I'm not the one that holds that belief that as a believer you have to work in Christian institutions or Christian-owned businesses. That's not me. And the reason why I believe that is because the Bible tells us that we are the light of the world, we are the salt of the earth, right? And so when we go into places and spaces, we ought to be the ones adding to those environments. We ought to be the ones coming in with the light because there is darkness in this world. And so as believers, we are the ones that are supposed to go in with the light, all right? The school that I work at is a public school. It is not Christian. It is not a private school. But because I am here, I'm able to reach more people that are not Christian, and I can be a light and I can preach the gospel. I can evangelize. There's so many things I can do to a people group that is unreached. Does that make sense? I also think about Daniel. When Daniel was sent to go to Babylon, right? He went to Babylon. That was a pagan place, a godless place. He was sent there, and Daniel was exceptional in everything that he did. He was full of wisdom. He interpreted dreams. I mean, he found favor. People saw his life and his devotion to his God, and that caused them to then feel convicted and also turn to God. And so I don't believe that that would have happened if Daniel stayed, for example, in a place where he was surrounded by other believers or other Christians. And so, you know, I appreciate, oh my gosh, I appreciate just you sharing your thoughts. And I do understand that it's frustrating, right? It's definitely frustrating to be in these institutions that are compromised. I get it, right? But the Bible tells us that we should go out into all of the world and preach the gospel and make disciples of all nations. It doesn't say go to the church. You know, I was reading the book of Acts recently, and something that I realized that I hadn't really realized before is that Paul actually went into synagogues. He went into Jewish synagogues to dispute different ideologies and belief systems. So he didn't just stay among believers. He was an apostle by nature. His job is to go around, to build, to establish, to plant. And so he would go to places that didn't share the same belief system as him and like teach people or bring understanding to the way. And so, you know, I want us to be believers regardless of where we are in life. And I always say that because I do understand that not everyone that is subscribed to this channel is a social worker or has any intentions on becoming a social worker. I get it. Wherever you are in life, wherever the Lord has called you, whether you are a finance professional, whether you are into real estate, whether you are into business, if you are a medical doctor watching this, understand this, that God has called you into that place so that you can be a light. He is looking to you for you to impact that region. All right. So yeah, I don't like this whole idea of, as a believer, being siloed, you know, and just coming to church is the place for that. When you come among the assembly of the brethren, there's something sacred about that. There's a fellowship in a church that you will not get with the world, right? And so when you come to church, you can be with like-minded believers. You can be edified, you can be built up, you can be sharpened and encouraged to then go back out into the world. So, you know, yeah, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion. But I believe that we are the light of the world, and I believe that we are the salt of the earth. And so just go. All right, so another thing I have to do today is I have to complete an intake that I started last week on Friday. That intake was a little interesting because I had to do it with a translator because the parent was Spanish speaking, and so I did the best that I could. I feel like sometimes when you do a intake assessment with a translator, there can be a breakdown in communication just because the way that I'm asking the question, it may not be interpreted that way. I won't know, right? Obviously, because I don't speak Spanish. But yeah, so I'm gonna just go back in and fill in what I can, and then after that, like I was telling you all earlier, I'm gonna see what to do about my caseload today, just because I have a lot of students to see today. I also have a meeting coming up, and I have to squeeze in time for lunch as well, but then also factor in the fact that the kids may be testing. So let me go ahead and get my schedule sorted out for the day. Seen just one client today. 2 are absent and 1 is testing, so I can't see him, but he is going to be my first, like with the one that's testing that I'm going to see a little bit later. He is a new client of mine. I just did his intake last Friday with his mother, and so typically when I have a new client, the first day of their session, I orient them to therapy. So let me show you all the video that I normally play. This is the video that I normally play for my clients when I first start seeing them, when a donut goes to therapy. It's a really good book that explains and introduces kids to therapy. It's kid friendly. So it normalizes how people feel when they first start therapy, but the character in the video is the donut. So it's she's explaining how at first the donut felt quivery, nervous within his belly, didn't know what to expect, but then eventually in the end he felt okay and happy, knowing that you know, he is in good hands, right? So at the end of the video talks about how he begins to feel confident that he can handle hard things in life. So yeah, out of the 6 clients that I have today, I can only see 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have gone to make some copies of things I'm going to do. Okay, the lighting is better now. With my client later. I'm also going to go ahead and finish up the intake that I told you guys before. I just need to like finalize some things and put a clinical impression down and an initial diagnosis. So the initial diagnosis is not something that has to follow the client for the entire time you're seeing them for therapy. It's just like initial. It's like, okay, considering all of the information that you've just gathered from this client's parent, what do you believe is the best diagnosis to put on this client's chart? You can always go back and make adjustments. And so I am going to go ahead and do that. And then sometimes you might not have an initial diagnosis, like you might not know what to put. And so there's room for that. I've talked to you all about that before. In cases like that, you can put, there are places in the dsm-5 depending on the diagnostic class, you can, like, if it doesn't fall into any of the certain disorders in that class, like, there's always room to put like other. So you see here it says other specified personality disorder. So in every diagnostic class, there's always going to be either an other or an unspecified option, right? So it could be an unspecified anxiety or unspecified depression, right? So just do the best that you can considering the information you've been given. But it doesn't have to be anything official right then and there, because I mean, you still have to gather more information. The intake is really just gathering information from oftentimes one source, but then when you meet with the client yourself, you are going to be able to make a better judgment just because you're meeting with the client more frequently. So that's what I'm going to work on now, and then in a little bit I'm going to take my lunch and yeah, just continue on with my work day. So one of the things that I run into when I am coming up with my clinical impression, my initial diagnosis, is that sometimes there's not just one diagnosis that fits, right? Because the client is presenting so many different symptoms and they kind of fit in with other ones. So for example, considering all of the things that I know about this client so far, ODD would be a suitable diagnosis, right? Oppositional defiant disorder. However, there's some things that were listed in conduct disorder that could be suitable as well too. But the key thing, this is a key, giving y'all this tip for free. For example, if you're taking the LCSWC exam or the LMSW exam, it's important to know the duration of the symptoms, right? So it's not just enough to know what the symptoms are, but how long are the symptoms lasting, right? Is there an age requirement in order to have that diagnosis? And so for this client, that is going to be what's going to help me to better make a judgment, because with conduct disorder, yes, there's something on this list that he has done, but there's a lot more criteria that needs to be met before he is given conduct disorder, whereas oppositional defiant disorder, there's not that many criteria that needs to be met for him. So that's just something that helps me when it comes to diagnosing. Yeah, it's definitely going to be ODD, but that's just something that helps me when it comes to making a decision on how to diagnose, because sometimes it can be very much like, I won't say confusing, but sometimes it can just be hard to figure out which one is more suitable. And this is something I have talked about in supervision. And the key thing that I would say is duration. How long are the symptoms lasting? And then is there an age requirement as well? I think those are the two things that you really should look out for. Feeling you get when you're finally done all your notes. Oh my gosh, today was just like OMG. But we thank God for a job.